rape one of his sisters with his brother John and their father. And this right here, this is important to remember. Fred says that he impregnated his sister, but as we'll see with Fred West, pathological liar. So any information that we get from Fred West should always be taken with a grain of salt.
But he did definitely rape and kill 13 people, if not more.
13 at least.
But it's kind of fun. It's like Fred and his father, they're sort of like the Manning family. You know, the Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Artie Manning.
You got the DNA. You've got the training.
Right.
You're all raping your sister, just like the Mannings.
Yep.
So the West, they grew up very secluded. They rarely mixed with outsiders.
Which is so weird because they seem real cosmopolitan.
I know, don't they, with their shoes and having sex with all the animals.
So, of course, this environment, Fred saw incest and rape. He grew up seeing incest and rape as something that was normal. This was what he was isolated from everybody else. He quit school at the age of 15 because he was a bit of a dullard. Couldn't read, couldn't write. Very charming guy, though. Had definitely had the gift of gab.
I don't know. They say that about so many serial killers, and I feel like that's just way overblown because their crimes are so heinous. And then they'll be like, but in reality, he would grunt.
No, it's because he does it. It's because it's like when you meet Fred West, you expect him to be like, "Hey, won't you come here? You ain't got my cord, you fucking bitch." And like it's when you meet him and he's just like, "Hello." They're like, "Oh, look at that. He can think. How charming he is."
Are you going to treat all the people in the UK like gnomes? Is that your plan, Henry? Oh, look at them. Like, that's our cab driver, Mr.
I have said this before. I believe that British women are absolutely gorgeous and their men are very smart.
I've heard you say it before, and I just heard you say it again.
So Fred, in addition to raping his sister, he took the incest even further, losing his virginity to his mother at the age of 12.
Thank God.
But that's not on Fred. That's on Daisy. Don't give Fred that one.
I'm not
Takes
giving...
two to tango, man.
He was 12.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I'm giving that to Daisy, but it definitely left a bit of a mark on little
Well, put
Fred's
it this
psyche.
way: Daisy was the Jordan in that scenario. Fred was the Scottie Pippen.
Sure.
And of course, the mother, Fred, was her favorite little boy.
Of course, because she was sucking his dick.
Yeah,
that's
on the
how
reg.
you know how mom has chosen favorites. That's just a factoid that everybody should know.
By dick?
If she's sucking your brother's dick,
Right.
he's the favorite.
Maybe it's best not to be the favorite. I feel like maybe.
Well, if you want to be president,
right.
So, of course, his mother would go up to school and constantly defend every little act that Fred did, and he gained the reputation for being a mama's boy. But the other thing that he gained a reputation for was hardcore bestiality.
oh man,
and that was a skill.
Charming guy.
Charming
Fred West,
guy.
what a charming guy.
And he actually gained all of his knowledge of bestiality from his father. His father told him, Henry, do you want to take how his father instructed him the best way to take a sheep?
If you slip a sheep's hind legs under your boots, it can't run away. Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. And when
these are the conversations, you know, Daddy. These are the conversations that a kid can't forget. I like that time you said, "Hey, why don't we go rape your sister?"
Right. I mean, it's funny to me in a way because he's actually making his father and his mother very proud with his actions, isn't he?
Well,
he's doing up to this point.
Up to this point. And we'll see later how they bafflingly find a reason to disown him. But until then, he's still the pride of the family. And his father had a very simple philosophy that Fred would carry with him for his entire fucking life. And this is a terrible philosophy to give to a psychotic child.
Yeah.
He said, do whatever you want. Just don't get caught doing it.
Right.
You see, it's a simple philosophy.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's very, very simple, but in the hands of a psychopath, it turns into rape and murder for at least 13 women.
Right.
And Fred, he idolized his dad. He looked up to him. He thought that his dad was the fucking bee's knees. He's the man who has all the answers. He taught me how to fuck sheep. He taught me how to fuck my sister. He lets me fuck my mom, and he thought that his father hung the fucking moon. Ooh.
Also, what's interesting too is how this is different from every other heavy hitter we've really covered, is that he had a strong relationship with his father. This is literally pinioned on, and mostly it's a rebellion. Mostly it's like a rebellion from the parents. And this is why I act this way, or like because they treated them terribly. This was just like they were fucking pals.
Yeah.
He taught him, like, he became an apprentice to a guy who was everything but a serial killer.
Right.
Yeah, as far as we know.
Or you have like a Dahmer's dad where he was just like there. Well, I just didn't know.
I didn't know what he was doing back there, but I heard some meowing. But I thought he wanted to be a vet. I am not sure.
That is true. I think that is true.
So, like many other serial killers, Fred West suffered from a very serious head injury at a young age. He crashed his motorcycle head on into a car that was traveling in the other directions. He spent a week in a coma. His broken leg, the leg that he broke in the accident, would be permanently shorter than the other, which caused him to limp for the rest of his life. And
do you think that was just him just driving, going like, seeing the truck coming, it's going like, "You get out of the way! Get out of the way now!"
Quite possibly. And he had a metal plate that was inserted into his head. And Fred, he already had inherited obvious mental problems from his parents. His parents were not sane people, but that combined with a fucking twisted and bizarre childhood environment and serious frontal cortex injuries really brought everything together to make this guy the perfect fucking killer. Now, we've seen with frontal cortex injuries before. The frontal cortex, Gacy had it. I believe Bundy had it. This is where the conscience lives. Like, where the things that would make all of us say, fuck no, I'm not going to do that, that's repulsive, these people don't have that.
Well, it's a good thing James Dean died in that crash. Otherwise, he would have came out a serial killer.
What I also think is interesting, too, is I like this concept that the idea that the frontal lobe may be where the antenna is that connects us to the collective unconscious.
Yeah, that's my theory.
I like this idea. I like this idea a lot because you can see how that would affect empathetic idea. Like, basically, it's like you got knocked off the Wi-Fi, and now you have to look at porn that's on your computer, which is you just drawing boobies on MS Paint.
I mean, that's not necessarily how I'd put forth my theory.
But I think that's how I would. I'm doing it for the normal man, for the working man.
Mm-hmm. But yes, I do believe that the connection to the collective unconsciousness of humanity does live in the frontal cortex of our brain, and then once that is severed, then guilt is essentially gone. Not everyone necessarily becomes a serial killer. Some people become CEOs.
Sure.
Some people become the shitty person.
Some people become podcast comedians.
Ooh, yeah.
I did have a frontal cortex injury as a child.
I used to just do somersaults into the corner of my wall. I swear to God, I did. And then I would also have Hammer Tuesdays, where I just hit my head with a hammer on Tuesdays.
So after this accident, Fred, of course, was suddenly prone to extreme fits of rage. He became extremely violent over extremely mundane things.
But okay, so at this point, when he gets really angry, he has one leg is shorter than the other, and he has a metal plate in his head, right?
Yeah.
So that's funny. Like when you see a dude with one short leg, it'd be like, yeah, punch me in the side of the head. That's the metal side. I don't care. Like, that's funny.
Yeah, that is really funny.
Yeah.
But after that accident, it wasn't the only serious head injury that Fred ever had. After that, he tried to stick his hand up the skirt of a girl while they were both on the fire escape. She pushed him off, and Fred landed head first onto the concrete. And that knocked him out for 24 hours.
I don't think a rape-related injury can technically add to the serial killer thing, because I think just the act of trying to rape her, that's more of it.
But he was just regularly trying to rape women at this point, because in his mind, it had been fused that sex equals control and domination. And he's also much more aggressive now. So and he's also got his father's wisdom of, if it feels good, do it, just don't get caught. All these things together, if he wants a woman, he will take her. he will take whatever he wants.
Right.
Well, never mind the fact that his many injuries made him look like he looked like Herman Munster.
Oh yeah, he was just slowly devolving into the monster, the creature he would become.
Yeah.
He's got a limp. He's got a plate his head. His head is like a cylinder.
Right.
It's been so fucked up over and over again. He probably said, "Hey, all right. Hey, don't let my leg quit you, or I'm gonna grab your knees, little girl." Like he starts doing that over and over again. It's gonna be hard for him to work in retail. It's gonna be hard for him to do fun stuff.
Welcome to Forever 21. I'm Fred West.
Come on, man. Hey, you want to try this tube top on? Let me put it on you. Let me try it myself.
He didn't have a lot going for him.
No, he
know?
didn't. And of course, like many other serial killers, he was also a petty thief. But what I mentioned earlier about the bizarre thing that made his family disown him, at 19, he was forced out of his village in which he grew up for impregnating a 13-year-old girl.
Okay.
And of course, this also shows you his fucked up way of thinking. Instead of responding with just guilt or remorse or anything like that, when they asked him, like, why did you do this? Why did you fuck a 13-year-old girl? He just said, doesn't everybody do it?
I mean, that's how confused he was, but that's
Yeah.
really what he thought.
That's exactly what he thought.
So, but this 13-year-old was outside of the family, right?
Yes.
So I think his
Well,
parents
that's good. That's at least good.
It's a step in the right direction, I will say.
I suppose so.
But for his parents, maybe they felt like he was blowing their cover. Maybe he's just like, what are you doing having sex with other people outside of the family? We have sex inside the family.
Yeah.
You know, very cultish.
I guess so. At his trial, a doctor actually testified that West, much like John Wayne Gacy, suffered from epileptic fits.
Okay.
That's what we saw again and again in Gacy. And what I actually researching this, Fred West is the straight John Wayne Gacy.
Yes.
Yeah, he really is.
And honestly, very similar careers. Construction worker, just no clown. That's the problem. He doesn't have that pop. He doesn't have an American fucking style like we have.
Yeah, he had no style.
No, he's a different character in the sideshow of serial killers. That's for sure.
He's a different character, but he's in the same tin as Gacy.
He's the Yosemite Sam of serial killers. That's how I imagine him going, kicking his tiny leg.
God, that would be so Gacy doing the clown tricks, and then you have Fred West just being all limpy and gimpy, and then you're like, and watch Mr. Dahmer eat a penis. That'd be the best sideshow ever.
That is one thing that a psychiatrist said, a psychiatrist who studied Fred West, that he said about him that was different from other serial killers is Fred West approached the entire thing with extreme enthusiasm. Like with enthusiasm and glee. A lot of guys, they kind of look at it as, oh my, this is a thing that I have to do.
Right.
I can't. I can't.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer was tortured. John Wayne Gacy was hiding a secret. Like Ted Bundy didn't do it with enthusiasm. He was just a fucking rip-roaring maniac.
Well, I think by the Florida State, that rampage, I think, was very, I would argue, enthusiastic. 15 minutes, 4 girls with a log, but...
Yeah.
Well, it's just more like, I'd say he left it all on the dance floor.
You could use that analogy, yeah.
Yeah. Fred West, he would approach it with just a glee, I think.
Let me get at you, Tushy. Let me get at it. Woo-hoo-hoo. Woo-hoo-hoo. He's the only one who said woo-hoo.
Yeah.
While he was raping somebody.
And speaking of Glee, we'll be playing the Cardiff Glee Club on March 23rd.
Very excited.
2015. Come on out. Tickets go on sale Friday. So, after he had been disowned, Fred moved back to Much Markle with his Aunt Violet. And Much Markle.
So did the parents of his mother just name everything after the flowers they saw? Violet, now you're just mud, because we don't find no flower.
Yeah, we got daisies, we got violets, we got roses. This is a flower-filled podcast.
It's very floral.
So it was at this time that he reconnected with an old girlfriend, a girl named Catherine Costello, but her prostitute name was Rena.
Oh, nothing like having sex with Rena and an hour-long stay at a motel.
Oh, my God.
Rena, I want to marry you. I don't know why you'd want to marry me. I'm a pile of filth.
Well, maybe that's what he loves about her.
So the two married and moved to the village of Coatbridge in Lanarkshire. God, it's the worst names.
Lanarkshire. You know what also every England town sounds like a name for a sauce, like a brown condiment.
Yeah, it sounds pretty tasty now that I think about it.
So Rena, she was already 5 months pregnant with her first daughter, Charmaine.
Oh, and what a lucky daughter she's going to be.
Beautiful, beautiful name.
Charmaine.
Yeah, she was fathered by a Pakistani bus driver who skedaddled.
He didn't stick around to see Rena and Charmaine and a little family.
I'm so sorry, Rena. I never meant to make love to you even once. I was trying to finish my route. Please, if you could just let me go. Let me go. I have 9 families.
Yeah.
So Fred would actually take Charmaine as his own, in addition to fathering his own child with Rena named Anne Marie. And Fred's parents, this is bizarre, Fred's parents thought that Charmaine, that the child belonged to Fred rather than the Pakistani bus driver. So when the...
Wait, what?
Yep, wait.
Okay.
So, but Fred told them that while Rena was pregnant. He said, like, okay, she's pregnant with my baby. Mm-hmm. So when the baby came out a little brown and half Pakistani, Fred just wrote a letter to his parents, told them that the child died in childbirth, and to replace that child, they adopted a mixed-race kid.
That is just, it's a bad lie.
But they believed it.
God, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but yeah, it seems to work.
Mm-hmm. There is not a single smart person involved anywhere in this story.
Definitely not.
No. So in Coatbridge, Fred worked as an ice cream truck driver.
Ooh, that is creepy.
Yeah.
That's sort of a gay, that's a little Gacy-ish.
Yeah. We had an ice cream truck driver in the town that I grew up in, drank buttermilk straight from the carton in the middle of a Texas summer. Like, it was,
that's disgusting.
It was...
The farts that must have filled that ice cream truck.
Him just coming up to little girls, so it's got the selling ice cream, just been like, hey, little girl. Hey, you want some Skittles on there? I'll rub my pubes on it. Shouldn't have said it.
After this podcast and everything else, I don't think I can have a kid anymore. Like, everything's ruined. Is there anything innocent anymore?
Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers.
That's it.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Never be ruined.
He's dead, Marcus. He's fucking dead.
Good. He died with a clean name.
He did.
So
is that what all life is now? Is it just getting out clean?
I think it is.
Yeah, that's all there is, Henry. I mean, that's all we have anymore.
After 70, you're guaranteed to get brought down by something.
Yeah. So as Fred was working as an ice cream truck driver, which gave him access to numerous teenage girls all over Coatbridge, of course, he did have an accident here. This is the very first time that blood was ever on his hands. He ran over and killed a 4-year-old boy with his van in 1964. The accident was ruled in Fred's favor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the boy ran out.
Technically, though, in Coatbridge, you can claim that he was trying to make him a speed bump, and that you get off scot-free because technically you're a civil engineer then.
Ah, very good.
So Fred, being a little paranoid, decided it was time to skip town, leave Coatbridge.
Yeah, and they went to the neighboring town, Lollipop Town.
Oh yeah. Nope.
Which is right next to Boot Building.
Nope. Fred and his family, their nanny, and a friend of Rena's named Anne McFall moved to Bishop's Cleeve in Gloucester. Oh, God.
So
that just sounds like the top of a pre-sass.
Yeah, the Bishop's Cleeve. But they had a nanny. I mean, he must have had some income coming through here with the ice cream gig and whatnot.
He was a thief.
He was just a thief. but a thief enough to have a nanny.
Yeah. Thief enough to have a nanny.
All right.
And this was in Gloucester, where they would eventually settle at 25 Cromwell Street, but that's going to come later. Fred actually got a job at a slaughterhouse here, which this job is extremely important to what Fred would do later on. This guy, Colin Wilson, wrote this book called The Corpse Garden. He said, One thing is clear, that at some stage, West developed a morbid obsession with corpses and blood and dismemberment.
Yeah.
There is no evidence that he had shown any such interest so far. It seems then that Fred West's sexual perversion became slowly more obsessive in the period following his marriage, and the evidence suggests that necrophilia and desire to mutilate corpses began during his period as a butcher.
I would have loved to see the interview with him going into the slaughterhouse for the job, and the guy was like, "Thank God you showed up. A bunch of people in business suits with like 2 working legs have been coming in and interviewing this entire goddamn time. I can't hire that scum. You got the metal plate. You got the limp. You're hired, Mr. West."
I'm built for this job.
Perfect.
I like to see the ribs, and I play with them like they're a xylophone.
And that's just
perfect.
good for morale. Yeah.
Can you work on 3 shifts? That'd be great. 3 shifts in a row. You know what? Also, too, is that you can see the direct line of logic too.
Yeah.
Where it's like he wanted sex to be easier. You get to a point where they build a sort of superiority complex of I can take anything I want, anybody I want.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as he starts being in this slaughterhouse and he starts rubbing his dick one time on like a slab of fucking hamburger meat that they all ate in their fucking shepherd's pie 3 weeks later, he realized like this is the easiest way. Is dead people. And
Right.
if you don't give a fuck where your dick's going, like you've taught your dick to have sex with like ducks and shit,
Yeah.
you can fuck a corpse.
Oh, I would almost argue a corpse is better than having sex with a duck.
Yeah.
If you have to choose, well, that's a toss-up.
I want to isolate that sentence you just said.
No.
And I want to isolate that sentence, and I want to just send it to every person you've ever worked with.
So Fred, as Henry said, the sexual demands became much more depraved, much more sadistic, violent oral sex, bondage, sodomy. He wanted it all hours of the day or night. So Rena and her nanny, having not been able to take it anymore, they escaped out to Scotland, but they left the children, Charmaine and Anne-Marie, behind with Fred and Rena's 16-year-old friend, Anne McFall, who had somehow become infatuated with Fred West.
God knows.
God knows.
Weird.
And so the 4 moved into a trailer, and McFall started taking care of Charmaine and Annie. And Rena, who was missing her children, she went back to Bishop's Cleeve, and she told Constable Hazel Savage, who will become very important later on in the story, that her husband...
Savage.
Hazel Savage, Constable Hazel Savage.
Yeah.
She told her that her husband was a sex pervert and unfit to raise the children. And of course, maybe not so coincidentally, there were 8 sexual assaults committed in the Gloucester area by a man of Fred's description at this time.
How many men are of Fred's description?
It's England. A lot. They're very smart.
It's the one guy
right.
with the metal in his head and the gimpy foot.
No, but how many of them have that? They've all worked horrible factory jobs.
Yeah.
They all look the same. The back of his head is bigger than the front of his head. It's just, you can see the steps. It's like, those old 70s living room where you could step from the top, you step like 3 steps down into a lower living room?
Yeah.
That's the movement from the back of his head to his front of his face.
It's true. He's got a horrible, horrible head. But despite having a terrible head, he still managed to impregnate Miss McFall in late 1966. McFall started to pressure West to divorce Rena more and more over the years. And so West, who was cracking under the pressure, murdered Anne McFall when she was 8 months pregnant. Okay, this is when it really starts to get brutal. He cut the 8-month-old fetus out of Anne's body, he decapitated her, and he removed all of her fingers and toes and her kneecaps before burying her near the trailer park where they once lived together. She was the first one killed and the last one to be discovered.
But that also fits with his original reasoning, which is he cut the fetus out. I mean, number one, because you can play handball with it. But number 2, so that when they found the body, it's this weird thing again where his validation was, I don't want anybody to know I was screwing around on my wife.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's what it's his daddy's rule. You can do anything you want as long as nobody knows about it.
Yeah, as long as no one gets caught. And the fingers, toes, and kneecaps thing, that would be Fred's MO for almost every murder that would come afterwards.
Well, he was doing a lot of fun Tim Burton type things with player pianos, just gluing them to the keys.
Yeah. Now, I guess the slaughterhouse kind of taught him how to pop a kneecap real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's perfect training.
Yeah, it really was. And
This guy is the Bo Jackson of UK serial killers.
Right.
yeah, and at this time it's said that he probably killed a girl named Mary Bastholm, who he kidnapped from a bus stop. They used to get a lot of girls from bus stops, and Fred's mother died in February of 1968 from complications of gallbladder surgery. That sent Fred into a bit of a theft spree. He didn't really know how to handle it, so he stole quite a bit. That was his coping mechanism, which caused him to switch jobs with fair frequency. But it was while he was employed as a delivery driver for a bakery where he would finally meet Rosemary Letts.
How does this man, he has so many women and so many jobs.
Gift of gab.
The gift of gab,
Gift
yeah.
of gab.
I just can't believe he was that charming.
He talked his way out of a sexual assault charge later on. We'll get to Fred and Rosemary West's first big day out. It is awful. It's terrible.
All right.
But we'll get to that.
I imagine he sees her, and it's that whole, like, that whoa, my love, my darling. Well, he's got 2 croissants around his balls, like playing with, look at her, staring at her, playing with them like they're his balls. Meanwhile, she's fucking sucking on a fork like it's a dick.
Yeah.
Well, Rose was born in Barnstaple.
It's a fine name. Barnstaple. It's good. There's a barn, and then maybe there was one person who had a staple once, and he became the mayor.
We are lucky to say we are the first town to have a pig as mayor.
That's good. A pig as a mayor is a fantastic mayor.
Progressive. She was born on November 29th, 1953.
So 12 years younger than Fred.
12 years younger. And this is very strange. Her mother was also named Daisy.
Not the most creative naming mechanism they have over here.
I suppose not. But Daisy, she suffered from severe depression, and while she was pregnant with Rose, she underwent regular electroshock therapy treatments while she was pregnant with this girl.
That cannot be healthy for a child.
Can't be healthy for a baby.
Unless you want to create a superhero.
Technically, it poaches the baby.
Yeah.
And of course, when Rose was born, she had many problems. She had a habit of rocking herself back and forth. When she was put in a pram, which is
what's a pram?
Pram's what they call baby carriage. So if she was put in a pram without the brake on, she would rock so violently that the pram would creep across the room.
I think that's terrifying.
Yeah, that's very scary.
Yeah, and as she became a little older, she only rocked her head back and forth, but she would do it for hours on end, which was the first indications that she was, in her family words, quote, a bit slow. Her nickname was Dozy Rosie.
Well, she'd be a lot faster if you took the brake off the damn thing.
And as she went from a baby to a toddler to a little girl, she'd just swing her head around for hours on end. And it would just hypnotize herself into semi-consciousness.
Did they ever think she was possessed?
No, they never did. They just thought she's a little slow, Dozy Rosie. Just leave her alone.
You got the technical. There's a British. Doctors come and look at it, and they call you. She was a doy.
Doy.
Doy. Yeah. That is doy. Yeah, round and round and round again.
Mm-hmm.
So Bill Letts, her father, he had his own problems. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. He suffered from OCD. He had a life of rigidity. He was a Navy man, so everything had to be exact. Everything had to happen on time. And if the house was just a little bit dirty, if he didn't get dinner exactly when we wanted it, he would beat his wife and kids viciously. But Rose, who, despite being Dozy Rosie, was still cunning when it came to men and how to manipulate
So
men.
how did she escape the beatings, Marcus?
Oh, do you really want to know, Henry?
How did she get out of it if everybody else is getting beat?
I would just assume she just kept on moving her head too fast for him to hit it.
So she pulled a rope-a-dope.
She was rope-a-doping.
No, she fucked her father.
She started sucking her father's cock.
Sucked her father's cock.
Cool.
But unlike,
That's a good story.
It's a different
That's
kind of
awesome.
strategy.
yeah.
No, I think the Berenstein Bears did that thing. They said the Berenstein Bears and the time when the daughter sucked the father's penis so that they wouldn't get beat for burning dinner.
I remember that one, and it taught me a lot of different lessons.
Her name
I
was
really
Sister.
wish What's really weird is you remember how it was all in black and white except for the red of the blood on the mother bear's face.
Yeah, they pulled that issue, I think. They pulled that one after a little while.
Not many of those anymore.
Not
around.
too many are left, no.
While both of them had regular sexual relationships with their parents, unlike Fred, who would end his sexual relationship with his mother, presumably when he left home, Rose's sexual relationship with her father would continue up until his death, well into her and Fred's relationship. And it is also said
Do you think he was just as surprised?
No,
You
he
think
knew.
he would still just be like, Rose, at some point, you've got to leave the nest. You can't keep up. You got to cut the umbilical cord, Rose. Believe me, I love the blowjobs. But you got to leave the house every once in a while.
Oh,
Yeah, I
God.
mean, you have to have your daughter go and spread her wings and have her suck other dicks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Rose. Yeah. So we'll get more into what happened with them later. But Rose, she was only 15 when she met Fred, who was 27 at the time, and it was like Henry said, it's like the theme from A Summer Place started playing. They locked eyes and fell in love almost immediately.
They did have a lot in common, a surprising amount.
They had a huge amount. They had so much in common. It's scary. That's why.
You fucked your mom? That's so weird. I'll be fucking me dad.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why these people are so scary, is because they have such similar backgrounds. They
Right.
happen to meet each other, and it was just the perfect formula for an extreme. And that's another thing that that will come up later, is that they had to keep topping each other. They had to keep one step ahead of the other, and Rose especially had to keep one step ahead of Fred to keep Fred from eventually turning his murderous impulses on her. But they had to up the ante constantly.
I'm going to say not that difficult to stay one step ahead of Fred. He had one very, very short leg and then one longer one.
But I will put also this way, too. It's just like, that is just a very evil scenario. That is just the worst type of, oh, man. I love to hear it.
Oh, yeah. So not long into the relationship, Fred was sent to prison for a petty theft charge. But Rose, she was already fully committed. She left the house at the age of 16 to take care of Fred's children, Charmaine and Anne-Marie. And while Fred was in prison, Rose gave birth to their first child, Heather. Although it is rumored, it is very possible that Heather is actually Rose's father's child.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Okay.
because of the prison sentence, because Fred was
Right.
in prison.
And she kept fucking her dad.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that what that old 70s sitcom was about, All in the Family?
So motherhood, of course, surprisingly enough, didn't come naturally to Rose West. She was quoted as saying, Henry, take this one.
Breasts are for fucking, not breastfeeding. Beautiful woman.
Yeah. Sort of a tit job there, I guess.
You know, and now that they had their own child, Fred and Rose, there was, of course, the matter of the other two children. One of them, Anne-Marie, was Fred's actual flesh and blood, but Charmaine, she was just the bastard of a bus driver who had no real relation to Fred or Rose.
I will say probably the smartest one.
I'm sure the
Definitely.
smartest one. You gotta be smart
She
to
was
be a bus
definitely
driver.
the most nervous one.
So during the summer of 1971, Rose, in a fit of rage, which she was prone to go into, she took a beating on Charmaine a little too far and ended up murdering the 8-year-old shortly before Fred was released from prison. And once Fred returned, he removed the fingers, the toes, and the kneecaps, and he buried her underneath the floorboards of their house. And when Rena came looking for the child in the fall of 71, Fred took action himself this time. He got Rena drunk. He strangled her. He removed the fingers and toes and kneecaps. He dismembered her and buried her near his first inconvenience and McFall. But the pair would soon move into their very own graveyard at the most infamous address in England, 25 Cromwell Street.
And in interviews with Fred, he talks about how, like, he originally did not find it easy to dismember the bodies, but what he would do, but the way he said it, it's like, it just sounded like a lie anyway, because he was like, I looked around for a way to sort of, I needed to separate the limbs, and I'd look at the axe, and I was like, oh, no way. I could not put an axe to a woman's body.
Yeah.
But I had this long serrated blade that I'd use to cut chunks of ice, and I thought, that I could use on a woman's body.
Mm-hmm. So he would
just like
cut off
really weird standards.
cutting off the toes and the kneecaps and the fingers, and then was he planting them in the ground, just trying to make some really weird trees or something?
We have no idea what he did with them.
They've never been found.
They've never been found. We have no idea where he put them, where he hid them, what he eventually did with them. He never, when he confessed to the murders, he never once said what they were for, what he was doing it for, or why. So we have no clue. It was just part of his ritual. But he had been doing it.
He just
from the
would
beginning.
keep them in his car, so after a big meal, he could like pick his teeth with them.
I mean, I had a couple of badger paws from a badger I had killed hanging
disgusting.
around a piece of wire off of my.
You're disgusting.
Right. These are these
Rearview mirror.
little things that we should all remember. Those are red flags. That's a Marcus Parks red flag moment.
So 25 Cromwell Street. This place was
Hey,
perfect for
kid.
the West.
Hey, my name's Marcus. You want to see my badger paws?
I'd love to not go to your house ever again.
No, if you were riding in my truck, you saw the badger paws. It was a single cab. They're right there. You couldn't help but look at them.
Right,
I didn't
right.
date a lot in that period in high school.
No, you didn't, huh?
Weird. That's weird.
I can't believe that Rebecca there, the prettiest girl in town, didn't love your badger paw collection.
No, her name was Michelle, and she did not appreciate it.
That's interesting. Honey, so do you think we should just put Marcus down now? Or should we wait until he gets real dumb?
No, he'll do something later.
Unfortunately, honey, he's exactly like I was.
I was better. Anyways, this place was perfect for the West family. Large enough to house the 7 children that Rose would eventually give birth to. And by the way, only 4 of those were Fred's. The other 3 were fathered by John's, and we knew they were John's because Rose...
They were brown.
They were brown. Rose exclusively dealt with the West Indian crowd. Jamaicans, Jamaicans, people from Haitians. Dealt exclusively in the big black fellas.
She was a very elite prostitute. That's what that means. She was only doing the most high-end clientele.
Well, Fred was obsessed with watching her. That was the whole thing. I said he was upset because he built the Rose's room, which is really fucked up. They were talking about in the police investigation when they found it, because when they first started, when he basically Fred confessed. We'll get into when he confessed to a bunch of these murders. They all said it was because of like manslaughter, and it was because he had gotten heated. It was a crime of passion. When they showed up and they saw this room had like a padded bed on the floor, for sound and video, they're like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And then they found stacks of videotapes of Rose having sex with John.
Oh, it was all wired with sound and video?
Yeah, and
Oh,
it had peepholes in different walls, so Fred could look in and watch her fucking the dudes because he was obsessed with watching a Jamaican dude just stuff her fucking holes.
Huh. It's like that movie Porky's. Remember
Yeah,
that when all the
it's
kids
a
used to
lot like
watch
Porky's.
the girls in the shower?
It's a lot like Porky's, except for all the rape.
Yeah.
Yeah, Porky's was just full of fun pranks.
Porky's was a part of rape culture. So think about that. Hashtag it.
Oh, and there was also Rose's room, of course, where she took all the Johns. There was a red light outside, so her children knew that her mother was, quote unquote, working. But it would be the basement that Fred would turn most of his attention to. And he even once joked to a neighbor that he was soundproofing the basement to turn it into his own private torture chamber.
I'm turning it into a torture chamber. I'm not joking.
He is funny.
This is real. This is real. I am doing it.
That is
I'm
funny.
gonna kill a girl down here.
Great.
Oh my God.
British humor. We were talking yesterday with the book with the tour manager for our UK tour, and they were talking about Jimmy
Savile.
I'm not changing it for nobody. Talking about how he used to just joke about having sex with underage girls, and they would just laugh and be like, "That is just classic comedy."
Yeah, that's classic Savile. He's just amazing. And I guess it's the same kind of deadpan humor that made people write off West when he would openly joke about murdering people.
Right.
And
because he locally, it's like they were known as like a nice but eccentric couple.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone was saying. Like, so can you imagine what the eccentric was basically just him just being like, it's not like I'm going to rape her. And then they're like waiting for the laugh on the other end.
Right,
yeah.
right.
It's like, I don't like your catchphrase, Fred, but thank you for the grapes.
So the first victim to see the inside was Fred's 8-year-old daughter, Anne Marie, from his first marriage. He and Rose